The grand dining hall of Xerion Prime was filled with voices, music, and shining lights. Aliens from different worlds sat at long golden tables. Servants rushed around with trays of glowing drinks and floating dishes. But in one corner of the room there was silence. There sat the Empress of Arvana, tall and proud in her dark red robes, her face cold like stone. Next to her sat her daughter Lyra, a small, fragile girl with pale blue skin and bright silver eyes. She never smiled. She never spoke. She just sat, unmoving, as if she wasn't really there. Most guests pretended not to notice her. Even the other nobles didn't speak to her. Some said she was cursed. Others said she was broken. But one pair of eyes kept looking her way, a human waiter named Yalin. Yalin was young, quiet, and polite. He had been working on Xerion Prime for only 2 months. He didn't have a rank, or power, or status. He just served food and cleaned up messes. But he watched people. He noticed things others DIDN T. And what he noticed most was the girl who never smiled. That night, Yalin moved between tables with a tray of fruit crystals. As he stepped near the Empress's table, one of the guests bumped him by mistake. His foot slipped, and the tray fell. Colorful fruit flew the air, and landed with a soft splash on the royal carpet. One piece rolled to Lyra's foot. Yalin froze. The entire hall went quiet. He quickly knelt down and picked up the fruit. His hands trembled, but then he looked up. Lyra's eyes were already on him. Her face was still blank, her lips tight. But there was something in her eyes. A question, maybe, or curiosity. Yalin smiled at her. Just a small, warm smile. She blinked, and for the first time, her head tilted slightly to one side. A quiet voice echoed through the hall. "Be careful," said one of the guards. Yalin nodded and stepped away. But he didn't forget her face. That night, as he cleaned the service room, he asked another human worker, "That girl, the Empress's daughter, what's her story?" The other worker sighed. "They say she was born weak. She can't move well, doesn't talk. And in there, culture, that's a shame. They value strength. She's seen as broken." "But she looked at me," Yalin said. "She understood." "Maybe," the worker said. "But don't get involved. No one touches the royal family, especially not a human." The next night, Yalin passed the royal table again. He didn't look directly, but he felt it. Someone was watching him. He turned slightly. Lyra's eyes were on him, quiet still, but focused. He dared to smile again. And again, she blinked. Her fingers twitched slightly on the table. The Empress didn't notice. She was too busy listening to a noble from the Nebula courts. But someone else noticed. One of the guards stepped forward. "Eyes down, human," he said sharply. JAL. Ian looked away. "Sorry, sir." Later that night, in the hallway, he saw Lyra again, this time without her mother. She was in a floating chair, guided by a quiet female caretaker. Her head turned slowly toward him as he passed. Yalin whispered, "Hi." The caretaker looked shocked, but Lyra made a small movement. She raised one finger, just one, and pointed to her heart. Then her lips moved just a little. Not a smile. Not yet, but something back in his room. Yalin couldn't sleep. Why did he care so much? She was royalty. He was no one. She lived in a world of power. He served tables. But still, he saw something in her eyes. Loneliness. And maybe hope. He thought about Earth. About music. About the old dancing nights his mother used to host for the kids in their street. Dancing made people forget pain, even for a while. What if I danced? He said aloud to himself. Would she understand? He didn't know, but he wanted to try. In the next part, The royal music begins. And Yalin, the human waiter, does something no one has ever dared. He extends his hand to the Empress's daughter. In front of the whole court. Asterisk, the grand banquet. Hall shimmered with lights. Music filled the air, soft, haunting, and slow. Alien nobles danced with elegant steps. Robes floated like mist. Voices whispered. Eyes watched. But Yalin stood at the edge, holding a small tray, not moving. His heart was racing, because tonight, he wasn't just a waiter. He had made a decision. The Empress of Arvana sat on her high throne at the center. Her cold gaze watched the dance floor. Her daughter, Lyra, sat beside her still, quiet, unmoving as always. Her face blank. Her fingers rested lifelessly on her lap. No one invited her to dance. No one even looked her way. Except one. Yalin stepped forward. A few guards noticed, but he carried a drink and moved like a servant. Still, his eyes were fixed on Lyra. Not the Empress, not the nobles. Just her. The music changed, now soft and slow. And then he did something that stopped the room. He walked up to the royal table. He didn't speak. He didn't bow. He just looked into Lyra's eyes and held out his hand. Gasps filled the air. Everyone stared. A human? A servant? Offering his hand to the Empress's daughter? The guards reached for their weapons. The Empress slowly turned toward Yalin. Her eyes were burning with cold fire. Her voice came out like thunder. What do you think you're doing, human? Yalin didn't step back. He kept his voice calm. I'm asking your daughter for a dance, Your Majesty. Silence. Even the music stopped. The Empress stood up. Everyone held their breath. Then, movement. Lyra blinked, slowly. Her head turned toward Yalin. Her fingers trembled. Then she lifted her hand out just a little, just enough to touch his. The Empress froze. The guards paused. Lyra's caretaker gasped aloud. She had never moved like this before. Jalen took her hand, gently, as if it was made of glass. And then, with a soft gesture, he helped her stand. It wasn't perfect. Her knees shook. Her steps were slow, but her eyes were full of light. The music began again. Yalin led her away from the table. Just a few steps, and together. They danced. No one dared interrupt. The nobles stared, speechless. Lyra's movement was slow, uneven. She stumbled once, but Yalin caught her. And she laughed. She actually laughed. The Empress sat down slowly. Her face pale. Her daughter, who had not moved freely in years, was dancing. Not with a prince. Not with a noble, but with a human waiter. After the song, Yalin gently helped her sit back in her chair. Her eyes were shining. He stepped back, bowed to the Empress, and returned to the servant's side without another word. The Empress said nothing, but her eyes followed him for the rest of the night. Back in the kitchen, the other servants surrounded him. Are you insane? One whispered. She could have had you executed. Another said. Jalen only smiled. She didn't. Later that night, Lyra sat in her chamber. She looked at her hand. It still felt warm. Her legs ached. But she didn't care. For the first time in her life, she had stood in front of a crowd. For the first time ever, she had danced. Not because someone forced her, but because someone believed she could. Asterisk. The stars above Zirion Prime glowed like always. But something had changed, not in the sky, not in the station, but in the heart of a girl who had never smiled before. Lyra sat quietly in her chamber, her hands resting in her lap. Her silver eyes stared at nothing. Yet inside her, a strange warmth remained. She had danced. With a human, and the music still played in her mind. In the throne room, the alien Empress stood before her advisors. They spoke of trade, war, and empire. But her thoughts kept drifting. To him, not the waiter, that human, he had broken a rule, yet done something no healer, no noble, no priest ever could. He had made Lyra move. He had made her laugh, the Empress. Clenched her fists under the table. She didn't understand how. Or why she had ordered the best doctors from across the galaxy. They gave her only silence. She had paid energy priests and mental shamans. They called her daughter cursed, but one low-born human smiled, danced. And something inside Lyra awakened. Meanwhile, Yalin was back at work, cleaning tables with quiet focus. Every now and then, someone whispered or pointed. Some laughed, some sneered. One alien noble even said, "Don't get too close to royalty. Human, you might stain their robes." Yalin didn't answer, but when he looked up, he saw Lyra watching him again, from a distance. Just watching. Asterisk. Later that night, something happened that no one expected. As Yalin walked past the royal corridor, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. A royal guard stood there. "The Empress requests your presence." Immediately, Yalin blinked. "Now?" "Yes." "Do not keep her waiting." Inside the private royal chamber, the Empress sat alone beside a tall window, looking into the stars. Yalin stood nervously, bowing his head. She didn't turn. "You touched my daughter," she said. Double quotes. "Yes, Your Majesty." "You danced with her." "I did." She finally looked at him. "You made her smile." Jalin's heart skipped a beat. He nodded. "I didn't do it for power, or for reward," he said softly. "She looked lonely, so I gave her something. My mother gave me when I was lonely music and movement." The Empress was silent. Then she whispered something no one had ever heard from her lips. "Thank you." Back in her chamber, Lyra played a soft earth tune on a small music crystal Yalin had left behind. Her fingers tapped the beat slowly. And then, "A miracle." She smiled. Her caretaker dropped the brush in shock. "Lyra?" The girl didn't speak, but the smile stayed. It wasn't wide. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Across the station, news spread. "Did you hear?" The royal girl smiled. The human did it again. Some called it luck. Others called it foolishness. But in one quiet heart inside, a cold Empress doubt had begun to melt. Asterisk. The summons came at dawn. Jale, and was just finishing his shift, wiping down the last table, when two armored guards entered the dining hall. Their boots echoed across the marble floor. All eyes turned. "You, human, come with us." Yalin froze. He set down the cloth slowly. His heart thudded in his chest. Had he gone too far? The older guard stepped closer. "The Empress demands your presence, alone." He followed in silence through the high golden halls. Lights glowed soft and blue. Statues of alien warriors lined the path. The guard said nothing. Jalin's thoughts ran wild. Was she angry? Had he broken another rule? They reached a massive door. It slid open with a quiet hum. Inside stood the Empress of Arvana, alone beneath a glowing map of the stars. "Leave us," she said to the guards. The doors closed behind Yalin. The Empress didn't speak at first. Stared at the stars above. Then softly she said, "Do you know how many beings have tried to fix her?" Yalin shook his head. "Hundreds. Healers, psychics, even machines. None could bring her light back." She turned toward him. "And then a serving dances, and she laughs. She smiles." Yalin said nothing. He didn't dare. The Empress slowly walked toward him. "Tell me, what did you do?" Yalin looked up. "I didn't fix her, Your Majesty. She was never broken." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "I just listened to her eyes," he said quietly. "And I offered her what no one else did." "What's that?" the Empress asked. "A choice." Silence filled the chamber. Then the Empress nodded once. You will spend 1 hour with her each evening. Under guard, under watch. Yalin blinked. I may? You will. Her voice was firm. She has requested it. That evening, Yalin entered Lyra's private garden, a quiet space under artificial starlight, full of glowing flowers and soft music from alien birds. Lyra sat waiting in her hover chair as he approached. She lifted one hand in greeting no words. Her smile returned. He brought a small music box from Earth. A gentle rhythm began, and for the next hour, they didn't talk. They just listened, tapped fingers, moved slightly to the beat, and in those soft movements, something deeper began to grow. Not romance, not duty, but healing. Outside the garden, the Empress watched through a hidden screen. Her daughter was laughing again, and for the first time in her long reign, she felt powerless, not because she was weak, but because a human had done something she could not. He had reached her child's soul. *The Arvana Empire had many holidays, but this one was special. Lyra's naming day, it was a quiet tradition for the royal family until now. This time, the Empress had made a shocking announcement. For the first time in years, her daughter would appear in public, and not just appear. She would dance. Whispers spread through the station like wildfire. Dance? The girl can barely move. Is it some kind of show? Why would the Empress allow this? But no one was more nervous than Yalin. He stood backstage behind the massive curtain of the Imperial Hall, holding a small music crystal from Earth. His hands trembled. His heart pounded. Across from him sat Lyra, dressed in soft silver robes. Tiny support units rested on her legs. Her hands were shaking. You don't have to, he whispered. Lyra looked at him and gently shook her head. Then she smiled. The lights dimmed. The nobles took their seats. The Empress sat upon her throne, her face unreadable. And then the curtain rose. Gasps echoed across the room. Lyra stood at the center of the stage, legs trembling but standing. Yalin stood beside her. Offering his hand, she took it. The music began slow, soft, Earth-style jazz with a peaceful beat. They moved, not perfectly, not smoothly, but with heart. Every step was a battle. Every sway was a victory. The nobles stared in silence. Some couldn't believe what they were seeing. The girl once called broken was dancing, and the human? He didn't lead with power. He led with patience. He let her choose the pace. He let her stumble and helped her stand again. Halfway through the dance, Lyra lifted her hand. For the first time in her life, she twirled. On her own, the crowd gasped. And then they stood. Not out of duty. But awe. The song ended. Jalen stepped back. Lyra stood alone for 3 seconds, and slowly sat. And in that moment, room erupted. Applause. Cheers. Even a few tears. The Empress did not clap, but her hand covered her mouth. Her eyes were wet. After the ceremony, Yalin helped Lyra back to her private chamber. You were amazing, he whispered. Lyra, still breathing hard, lifted her hand again, and this time, with effort, she spoke her first word. Thank you? The Empress arrived later that night. She found Lyra already asleep, but in her daughter's hand was the crystal music box. It was still playing the same soft melody. The Empress closed her eyes. And for the first time in many years, she cried. Freely, not out of shame, not out of fear, but because her daughter was no longer silent, and the one who gave her voice was just a human waiter. The next morning, the galactic news spread like wildfire. Princess Lyra danced and smiled. A human healed what royal medicine couldn't, the waiter who touched a royal heart. Millions watched the footage. Some cried, some doubted, but all asked the same question. Who was that human? Inside her private chamber, The Empress of Arvana sat silently, watching the same clip over and over. Her daughter, once so still, was now moving dot, laughing dot, standing dot, and beside her a human servant. No crown, no weapon, just a smile. And open. Hands. A soft knock. Enter, she said. It was Lyra's caretaker. She bowed low. Your Majesty, the child is asking for him. The Empress didn't reply for a long time. Finally, she stood. Send for Yalin, alone. Yalin entered the throne room with a bowed head. He had expected guards. He had expected harsh words. But the Empress sat quietly on the edge of her throne. Not high above, but closer to him. Sit, she said. He sat nervously. You are not. Just a waiter, she said softly. Not anymore. Yalin didn't know what to say. I have ruled for 30 years, she continued. I have crushed rebellions, made peace between warring moons, conquered stars. But I could not reach my own daughter. Her voice trembled. And then you came. No rank, no power, just music. Yalin nodded slowly. I never meant to change anything. I only wanted her to feel seen. The Empress looked away. You made me see her again, she whispered. Then she stood. My advisors want to remove you. They fear your influence. Yalin swallowed hard. She turned to face him. But I won't let them. The Empress stepped down from her throne. For the first time, she looked not like a ruler, but like a mother. I want you near her, as a guide, a friend, as long as she wants you. Yalin blinked. Me? Yes, she said. Because Lyra smiles only when you are near. That night, in the private garden, Yalin met Lyra again. This time, she walked to him without aid, slow, careful steps. She didn't speak, but she reached out her hand, and together they danced again. The moonlight touched her face, and Yalin saw it clearly now. She was no longer the broken child. She was a girl becoming whole. Outside, unseen, the Empress stood in the shadows, and when she saw her daughter lift her head, laughing softly, she bowed her head. For the first time in her reign, she felt humbled. Not by war, not by defeat, by kindness. Asterisk, the royal court was not happy. He's just a human. He doesn't belong here. This is dangerous. The Empress of Arvana listened in silence as her councils shouted in the grand chamber. Their voices echoed off the high walls, but her eyes stayed focused on the glowing screen in front of her. It showed her daughter Lyra walking slowly through the garden with Yalin. The human waiter got, and then she spoke. A full sentence. I want to learn how to dance on my own. The Empress stood up. I have heard enough. The room fell silent. You all speak of bloodlines, strength, and control. She paused, voice steady. But not one of you could make my daughter smile. She looked around the room, eyes cold. And not one of you will ever speak against that human again. Meanwhile, Yalin sat beside Lyra in the quiet of the Star Garden. She had improved more in the past week than in years. Her steps were still, slow. Her voice was still soft, but her spirit was brighter. I heard what they said, she whispered. Ali N looked at her. The nobles, they don't like you. He smiled gently. Does that bother you? Lyra shook her head. Not if you stay. Later that evening, Yalin was called again. But this time, not to the throne room, to the hall of the Starburn, a place where only heroes and scholars were honored. There, standing beneath banners of royal history, was the Empress, and she held something in her hands, a simple silver pin, shaped like a falling star. Yalin of Earth, she said, you are no longer a servant. You are now a guardian of the royal line. Gasps filled the room. A human given a title in the royal bloodline? It had never happened before. Yalin stepped forward. But I don't need a title, he said. I just want to be her friend. The Empress smiled. "This isn't for you," she said softly. "This is for us, so no one can ever take you away." She pinned the silver star on his chest dot, and in that moment, the Empire changed. Across the galaxy, millions watched the official broadcast dot. They saw a once-forgotten girl, now standing proud. They saw a human not with a weapon, but with a song. And a smile changed the future, and in the hearts of many, something shifted. Hope, kindness, possibility. That night, Yalin returned to the garden. Lyra waited with music playing softly. "Did you know," she asked, "that before you came, I thought I was invisible?" He sat beside her. "I saw you the moment I walked into that hall," he whispered. She smiled. And this time, when they danced, she led the steps. He was just a waiter. A servant no one noticed. A human among stars. But with one dance, he reached a royal heart. And with simple kindness, he changed an empire.